Cropsey in the UK is the name of your mate who turns up late at the pub. It's like, Cropsey!
This one is a little bit more of a true crime story, so you can't take the piss out of it too much because it actually happened.
Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
So it's a very, very well-known one. You've probably heard of it. It's New York, so Staten Island, Cropsey.
Cropsey?
Cropsey.
Have you not heard of Cropsey?
No.
Oh.
So I'll go through the first little paragraph, which is a kind of little backstory of what Cropsey is to kids, and then I'll go through the true
origin.
story because there isn't much more to it.
There's a Netflix documentary about this.
Yeah, it came out in 2009.
My friend Tom Norris, who was on the last Urban Legends, he told me about Cropsey once when we was on a long, dark car journey, and I'll be honest, it did spook me a little bit.
I won't go into too many of the dark details, but I'll just tell you the generic story of the whole thing.
Yeah. Have you? Before we get to that, have you ever heard of Slender Man?
I've heard of it. He's got the big fingers.
Yeah. When I first heard about Slender Man as a child, it scared me. And Cropsey did the same thing.
Right, okay.
So I put them both together. They're working in cahoots, them two.
Okay. Spook fest. Here we go.
So, Staten Island, Cropsey.
Staten Island, New York.
Good.
Growing up on Staten Island, children had often heard of the legend of Cropsey. For the kids in their neighbourhood, Cropsey was the escaped mental patient who lived in the old abandoned Willowbrook mental institution, who would come out late at night and snatch children off the streets. According to law, an insane man with a hook for a hand terrorised neighbourhood boys and girls, dragging them into the crumbling ruins of Staten Island's abandoned Seaview Hospital.
Oh.
Cropsey is the creature that lurks at the end of your block. It's a shadowy figure that prowls the edge of the playground. Cropsey is Staten Island's personal boogeyman, and he was always out there waiting to get the children. Parents used to tell this tale to spook their little ones at night to go to bed, or Cropsey will get you.
It's pretty grim, isn't it?
That is parenting 107. Like, don't do that.
We had a
guys.
man made of bogies. Do you know what I mean? They're like, it's a boogeyman.
I got that.
They've got like a little child murderer that lurks in the shadows.
Quickly, I was laughing at the beginning of you telling the story because Cropsey in the UK is the name of your mate who turns up late at the pub. It's like, Cropsey!
Is it really?
Well, it's just like the name of a mate of yours. It's not a particularly scary name. It sounds like a nickname of someone you would know.
I've never heard of that.
It's quite strange because everything I was reading...
Are you saying...
there's not a thing, but like it sounds like a mate of yours.
Oh, yeah, I thought you was going to say that.
No, it sounds like a mate of yours, and you can imagine it shouting at the other end of the pub.
Oh, right, Cropsey. Yeah.
Hello, mate.
Yeah.
It was quite strange because there wasn't much on the internet of the story of Cropsey itself.
What,
It's
the origin story?
It's all over Netflix.
There's a massive origin story, but what I've told you, there isn't like a classic like Bloody Mary. You could tell the story of her going to prom and then being killed and blah blah blah. But there's nothing. That's it. And then this is why there is a real thing called Cropsey.
So has Cropsey done some stuff?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
But strangely, I don't think there was a reason why they call it Cropsey either. I think it was just a name that came out, like the Candyman and stuff like that.
I think they did have a name.
I couldn't find one.
That's because his official name was Liam Crop.
It wasn't.
Cropsey.
I can tell you his official name now. So
every time you go on to tell the origin story and the word Cropsey comes up, can you say it like how Max is saying?
no,
Cropsey?
because this is about actual people.
Oh, okay.
So Cropsey turned frighteningly real in the 1970s when a local drifter named Andre Rand allegedly began
Randy! Sorry, did he die?
He's still in prison.
Okay. Right,
allegedly
Randy.
began attacking the children of Staten Island. Rand was born Frank Russian. He worked as a janitor at the Willowbrook State School, an institution for mentally disabled children, not far from the ruins of Seaview. So there are two places I mentioned in the story at the beginning.
There's a lot of mental institutions very close together.
Yeah. Bad idea.
Well, one of them was ruins, so it was broken. It was down,
right.
and then they reopened a new one.
It's almost like the Tottenham ground, isn't it?
Willowbrook was open for 40 years. Willowbrook was open for 40 years, and it repeatedly came under fire for the mistreatment of its students. The first child to go missing in the string of disappearances was a 5-year-old called Alice Pereira, who vanished in 1972 after her brother left her alone when they were playing in the lobby of a building on the island. Reports also suggest that Alice may have been sighted in one of the parks. Rand was the prime suspect in this case due to his previous criminal record. Alice was never seen again. The second was 7-year-old Holly Ann Hughes, who, according to witnesses, was spotted with Rand on the day of her disappearance in 1981. The third was 11-year-old Tia Hees Jackson, who disappeared shortly after Rand was released from prison in 1983.
Okay, so quickly, there have been 3 disappearances, all Rand related, and he's still out and about.
So he did go to prison, but I'll explain what for in a second because it's separate technically. The 4th was Hank Gafforio, a 22-year-old, but with a really low IQ, and he was last seen with Rand at a diner in 1984.
Because there's no kid called Hank. You know what I mean?
The bodies of those people were never recovered.
All those 4.
Yeah. The final child, Jennifer Schweiger, in the summer of 1987, was a 12-year-old with Down syndrome. Jennifer told her parents that she was going for a walk, but she never returned. A massive search party commenced. Neighbours combed the empty lots and the wooded parks of Staten Island. By this time, Rand was homeless and living in a series of makeshift campsites. One of his outposts was built in the woods behind his old stomping grounds, Willowbrook State School. While searching for Jennifer near the shuttered school, a firefighter uncovered a small foot in the earth, which ultimately gave way to Jennifer's body, buried in a shallow grave, and Rand's camp was discovered shortly after that. He was quickly arrested and charged him with that murder. In the court, the case was open and shut. Rand was an ex-con with a record of crimes against children. So in 1969, he was arrested in South Bronx after attempting to rape a young girl. In 1983, when he worked for Staten Island School Bus Company, he kidnapped 11 children. He brought them lunch and then drove them to New Jersey's airport for no reason. None of the children were harmed, but he was apprehended and served 10 months in jail for unlawful imprisonment.
Well, he was trying to take them on a plane.
No,
Well,
he just took them to the airport
He
and
kidnapped
then
them, but dropped them off at the airport.
and just didn't say a reason.
What?
Yeah, no reason at all. But there was actually no concrete evidence that could link Rand to the murder of Jennifer, the body that they actually found.
Right.
In 1988, he was ultimately convicted of kidnapping in the first degree and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The jury,
Even though he'd been floating around since the late 60s.
the jury was unable to reach a verdict on the murder charge, so it fell through.
Right.
And what else? So he got done for 10 months for like nicking like 11 kids.
10 months for kidnapping the kids.
And he still keeps getting jobs at schools when he gets out.
Yeah, it seems quite strange actually.
Yeah.
In 2004, which was just before he was going to be eligible for parole again from prison, he was put to trial once more for a 23-year-old case, which was Holly Ann Hughes, the one I mentioned earlier.
The one that they'd never found the body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Prosecutors presented new evidence in the proceedings, and a jury convicted Rand of kidnapping the little girl in 1981. She didn't return home after going to the store to get a bar of soap with a friend. Rand pulled up to Holly and her friend and pulled Holly into his car and drove off with Holly. Her parents filed a missing persons report and a search was issued. When questioned, several eyewitnesses reported seeing Hughes with Rand. She was last seen with him and never seen again. So because of the new evidence, in 2004, he was sentenced to another 25 years.
Right, so that's
On-
2030.
On top of the rest of his sentence, which I think he had about 8 years left, but he was eligible for parole, which obviously got ruined. So I think in the real world, he's still in prison,
Yeah.
still alive.
How old
he
is
must
he?
be old.
I think he was born in 1944,
Wow,
I
so he's
believe
about
what I
80.
read. Yeah, and he is not going to be allowed out of prison until 2037. So
Should
he'll
be
be in
dead.
his he'll be in his 90s, so the likelihood is that he'll be dead.
Right.
But as I said, yeah, it's a real case.
So he's a child murderer.
Yeah, and the other ones, Tahiz Jackson, Alice Pereira, and Hank Gafforio are all still to this day unsolved. But he's the prime suspect in all of them. But because the bodies are still missing, they're just they're described as young children.
I'm seeing 2 different sides here, Stephen.
Yeah.
We've got Rando,
Yeah.
bad bloke,
Yeah.
not a good guy, should rot in prison.
Yeah.
And then we've got our mates,
Cropsey.
Cropsey!
Well, based on that, it does say that the kids that have never been found, the bodies, and there's no one to convict because of it, that it says that they remain lost youths who fell victim to the Cropsey legend.
So are they trying to insinuate that Rando was Cropsey?
Yes, so the story of Cropsey, the one who's stealing these kids, there was an actual man who was going around kidnapping kids.
And the mums said to the kids, instead of going, there's a man that's going to get you, there's a monster man that's going to get you.
Essentially, I believe.
When did Cropsey first come into parlance?
That's something that seems a bit strange as well. I think it was I just don't think it was very widely spoken about because he didn't go down for murdering any of these kids. It was just like, oh, a guy's been put in prison for kidnapping a kid. Like, it wasn't like a scary at the time thinking about what he was doing. It was just like, oh, it's just a random kidnapper, which probably happens quite often. So it was like Cropsey, when kids met, it's just something they came up with. So it was around the same time.
The reason I ask is because, like, whether it's like it's a rolling position that people take. Obviously, Rand took it from like the late 60s.
Oh, you're saying
the
like
mid-80s.
what, in the 40s someone else might
Yeah,
have
when
been
in the
doing
40s someone else. A
Yeah.
little bit like, your turn now, mate.
Yeah.
passing the baton.
Exactly.
Just to keep the urban legend going, I guess.
Yeah, but since then, documentary's been made about it. He is a real person. You can find photos of him.
What does
Andre Rand.
What is Cropsey supposedly reported to look like?
The actual Cropsey, there's a few stories of him having a hook for a hand,
Croppo.
which is quite unusual.
If I know Croppo.
Do you know what? Croppo's always had a dodgy right hand.
Fiona, bring up the computer and put Cropsey into Google Images.
Are they scary?
No, not really. It's just sometimes he has a massive knife. Sometimes he has a hook for a hand. So this is the actual man. You can see Andre Rand.
So that's Andre.
Yes.
Right, so he is a bastard. He looks like quite a heavy duty lad as well. Like, he looks like he's got a strong. Who's
Oh,
that?
God.
Oh,
Is that Andre?
It might also, yeah.
well, that's
That's just when he look. You can still see it's the same guy.
See, he is.
There you go. You can actually see the pictures of all the kids that went missing. Look down there.
Yeah, we probably don't need to look at
Yeah,
them.
we don't need to look at that.
Yeah,
No.
it'll just make it sad. This is happy hour.
But yeah, you can, if you Google it. Googling through anything of Cropsey actually comes up with all the real stuff. Normally, if you like search Bloody Mary, it's going to show you this terrifying woman,
Yeah.
creature thing.
If you are listening to this on the podcast, do search Cropsey and you got all pictures of him at the pub playing left wing for the local team.
Oh, we're talking about real death.
No, it's
No, we're
Randy's
talking
real.
about Randy's a knob.
Yeah.
Big old twat, Randy.
Yeah. Cropsey.
Cropsey.
Yay! Proper lad.
So yeah, that's the story of Cropsey. Pretty dark.
Yeah.
True story though.
Very
So
dark.
It's just someone calling a murderer by a fictional name, isn't it?
yeah, it's quite strange that it's become like an urban legend because it's to anyone else that'd just be the story of Ted Bundy or
Yeah, it's like
Jeffrey
calling
Dahmer, it's
Ian
just
Huntley like Bilbo. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, like you're giving a fake name to a very maybe that's a way to make it a bit lighter though.
doesn't.
No,
No, still very, very bad.
you don't need to do scareability on that one. It's a
New,
true story.
very scary.
That is scary. Andre, scary bloke. Cropsey!
Yeah.
Good lad.
Yeah.